Today we've got a malicious compliance story involving working for 27 hours straight. We'll get to that in a bit, but first, want to chew me out for your mistake and then ask me to go against your own rules? Okay. I was working at this multinational software consultancy firm a few years back when this happened. A few of us got a Skype notification from our manager to check our email ASAP. It was one of his higher-ups with my manager in CC asking us why we had some specific Microsoft program installed, who gave us the license and authorization to install it, and if we didn't have authorization, we should remove it and read our guidelines. He was a huge, unprofessional jerk about it. I checked and did have it installed, even though I didn't install anything on that machine. I replied as such and said I'd already removed it. I didn't really enjoy having to go through crap when I wasn't in the wrong, and told my manager as such. He just said I knew not to do it, which really pissed me off some more. Come next week, everyone gets the same treatment. Turns out we were all given the same software packaged when they imaged our laptops. Management became very quiet when we raised that flag, but did make sure to ask us to remove it. This is where malicious compliance comes in. I was working on a project, and we were asked at the end of one day to provide a video demo. We couldn't record using phone cameras, so I declined and told them how to run our work so they could see it running for themselves. I then left and ignored all calls from work, which were many. Went to the gym, had a nice meal, ignored all texts. Fun times. Come next morning, I had several emails asking for our team to just use some software and get it done. That's just what I wanted. I asked in writing if they would provide the software and was told to just download anything and do it already, as the appropriate department would take 2 weeks to analyze our needs, and that they needed that demo yesterday. They couldn't provide us with appropriate software either, as they had no idea what would work and it wasn't their business. The thing is, we weren't even allowed to download freeware according to our guidelines. So I quoted page and section, reminded them that I had a previous written warning and order, as well as my entire office, and would refuse on that basis. I would be happy to run the whole thing on my personal machine with my own software, but reminded them that that was also against the rules. Needless to say, I had an interesting chat with my own manager, and was eventually excused to just download anything and record the demo. I made sure to send the video along with information I'd been explicitly told by my higher-up to comply, who I CC'd and put in the software's name and download website so I could cover my butt. That rule was relaxed very soon after. Funny thing was, whenever our laptops needed to be re-imaged, they would still come with the offending program. We were just never bothered about it. This is like new ownership buying an old factory that's designed to do some certain process, but because all of the hardware in that old warehouse they purchased wasn't specifically licensed by them, they tell all the workers they gotta rip it out. Well, what are you left with? You don't have any tools to do the job. It's like the management is basically telling them, actually, on second thought, can you go back out to the dumpsters and wheel all those machines back in and use them? We kinda need the work to actually get done. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy awesome stories of malicious compliance, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, being sick with COVID must be a vacation. This happened to me a while ago in 2020 at the height of COVID. I, female 26 at the time, was working as a department manager at one of my local big box stores. Just before Thanksgiving, I started to get sick. The way our system worked, we were supposed to do a check-in to prove that we didn't have symptoms of COVID. One of the managers would normally fill in the form when you got to work. And if you were management, someone else had to do it for you. Some of the basic questions: do you have XYZ symptoms of COVID? Have you been around anyone with COVID? Have you taken a COVID test in the last 3 days? At this time, I started to get sick. I told my manager what symptoms I was having. On top of that, I'd just been around 2 people who had come down with COVID, and I'd been out of state 2 weeks prior. She marked off that I didn't have any symptoms of COVID. She insisted that we all work through the holiday or get written up. So I ended up working through the holiday because I really needed my job. Looking back, I know that wasn't the smartest thing to do, considering we were at the height of a global pandemic, but I really couldn't afford to not be working and to have my boss make working even harder. She was known lovingly by the employees as Satan incarnate. Because of that, I started getting more sick. Customers were allowed in our store without masks as long as they said, "I have a medical reason." I informed my boss, and I'm immunocompromised and I have asthma before I even started. I knew it was likely that I would get sick if customers were coming in without masks. I wore a mask all the time, but I knew that wasn't enough. After the holiday, I took a couple of days off because I was sick. My boss didn't like it, but she appreciated the fact that I worked through the holiday regardless. I've been coughing and sneezing at work and trying to avoid getting people sick, so it was pretty well known by the employees that I wasn't doing well. During that time, I took a lot of medicine and was trying to get better, but I started getting texts from another manager saying something along the lines of, "It must be nice to be on vacation. You're not really sick, you're just relaxing and having a great time, huh?" That really hurt. I hadn't gotten a COVID test, so that way I could come back to work as quickly as possible and help relieve any backlog that my absence had caused. Cue the malicious compliance. When I read that, I decided instead of going back to work feeling, well, still sickish, I was going back when I was fully okay. So I went and got a COVID test. At that time, COVID tests weren't rapid, and they took about a week to process. I called my manager and told her I had to get a COVID test because I had so many symptoms and they weren't going away. Legally, she couldn't force me back to work, and the company had to be notified that someone in the store might have COVID. That way, if anyone else got sick, they could keep track. Turns out there were a couple of employees who had COVID and had been coming to work, and their forms were not being filled out properly. And because I forced the issue, they were also able to force the issue too and got their COVID test and paid for their missed work. I mean, I understand business needs to keep on rolling, places need to keep their doors open, and bills continue to need to be paid, but I can't lie about how disappointed it makes me feel to hear about places like this that not only did not take precaution as far as trying to make sure everybody's relatively safe, but also just kind of blatantly disregarding the whole thing. Our next story is the 27-hour shift. An old Facebook memory popped up on my feed recently and reminded me of this. Years ago, I worked for a big box office supply retailer in Canada. During my last 3 or so years there, I was a member of what they call the project team. The purpose of this team was to travel the country and work on the physical appearance of different locations. One project might be a week-long $500,000 minor renovation to modernize the looks, physically move 1 or 2 aisles around, and rework some of the planograms. The next project might be a multi-million-dollar new build that'll take many weeks and would involve taking over operations once our construction contractors were nearing completion and we were expecting a couple dozen fully loaded trailers of merchandise to arrive. Occasionally, though far less often than one would think, we would come into a store that was being shut down and help facilitate the movement of product to other locations before turning the lights off for good. This particular project was one of my first major ones since joining the team, so I wasn't terribly familiar with timelines and how long things should take, but this one was a relocation job. We were shutting down one store and reopening it in an old Chapters building a few blocks away. The time given was 3 weeks, I believe, though might have been 4, it's been a decade since this happened, to open the new location, and the closure would take an additional week. We also had a brand new hire working as our project coordinator, though the 2 directly below him were experienced members and would help smooth out any wrinkles. But the project coordinator had ultimate say on how things would proceed. Hard opening was scheduled for day 0, and home office had hired a local radio station to host a couple of their morning DJs there, had set up a traditional Chinese celebration including dragon dancers, and a couple local politicians were to cut the ribbon, so we couldn't easily reschedule should any major issues arise. First couple weeks went smoothly. We brought on 24 temp workers to help put the shelving units together and start setting up product and planograms. I was put in charge of receiving the seemingly endless train of trucks dropping off new product and ensuring there were no discrepancies. A few small hiccups occurred, but nothing that couldn't be quickly solved with a polite yet firm phone call to the offending freight company's dispatch team to run traces on missing pallets, and to hotshot them here ASAP once found. By now, we were starting the 3rd week of 6 10-hour shifts. and we discovered things were starting to slowly fall apart during our Monday morning scrum. We had finished installing the networking gear and set up the store computers and point-of-sale systems, but nothing would connect or talk to one another. This meant none of the product we had received could be properly put into the system to show on hands. Registers wouldn't talk to anything, so even if we could show stock, we wouldn't be able to charge any customers. Even the internal network that would allow the copy center to print to different printers wouldn't work. Then we realized we were starting to fall behind on getting planograms set up. There was a furniture pad that had yet to see a single desk or chair constructed, and a million tiny tasks had yet to be addressed. It basically amounted to 2 weeks worth of work needing to be done in one. We warned home office but couldn't get an extension on the opening. It had to open by the end of that week. No excuse. Okay then. 10-hour shifts turned to 12, which quickly turned to 14-hour shifts. The hotel staff were fantastic and took pity on us, allowing special outside hours access to the rooftop hot tub, as we usually didn't get back until after it normally closed, and we needed nothing more than a hot soak and cold beer at the end of each day. The final day of prep rolled around, and we're still at least a day behind. That morning at 7, we load up on Starbucks and Red Bull and warn our temps that it'll be a long day. We tell them that if they'd like to stay, it's guaranteed double time pay for whatever extra time they put in. But no hurt feelings if they just want to bug out at the normal time. 5 rolls around, and the majority of the temps take off, leaving just 6 behind. A couple more leave around after 2 or 3 hours as they have other obligations. We're now down to 4 temps and our core internal team of 6. Midnight decides to arrive and our network finally goes online. Mad dash to finalize all that. 2 in the morning makes a shy appearance, only to find all of us passed out on chairs for a quick nap. Mind you, we're still punched into work since 7 that morning. Short nap finishes and we make a mad dash to at least give an appearance of a finished project. A few hours later, around 7, we start seeing regional and district managers showing up, along with the staff that'll work at this location. We're basically delirious from a lack of proper sleep. Yet, we're not done. Next up is to put on our manager uniforms and help with the grand opening, just in case something pops up that needs our help. 10 in the morning finally arrives, and our project coordinator tells us to go home, and that he'll explain to payroll why we just pulled a 27-hour shift. Understandably, it took a bit of convincing from our leadership team to actually prove that our punch times were correct, and even more finagling to override the payroll systems to ensure we were properly paid, as whoever had programmed the software had never considered any sane person would work that long in a single shift. Needless to say, my next big project with a similar scale was miraculously expanded to run for 6 weeks instead. It was a nice paycheck though. I mean, honestly, it does sound like a pretty nice paycheck if you can just get like 3-4 days worth of work or essentially pay done in one day. That's definitely gonna spike up your next paycheck pretty darn nice. Our next story is being 1 minute late equals being out for the day, so I'll take the day off. So I worked at this company for 2 years and never had attendance issues brought up, and received 2 promotions in a year. They were training me for another promotion when my boss goes through every time I've ever been even a minute late back from breaks or lunches. Keep in mind, in the last 6 months, I'd only ever been out sick twice, which even though I had sick pay, were each considered a strike. Even when I got COVID from being exposed at work, the 2 days I called out were each separate occurrences, held against me on my review and bonus. Effectively, it was 5 to 10 minutes, all in 1 minute increments, and those 10 minutes were enough for him to write me up and say I will still be training for the promotion. But there is no way in my review in a month I'll receive the promotion or pay increase till next review. He even said I was an example employee, excelling in this role, and I can handle more than anyone without being challenged. So because of these few minutes, I will have to do the job for this promotion for a year without pay or title, and I'm on a write-up. I asked him to clarify if that meant each time I was a minute late was as much as a strike as being out sick for the day, and he said yes, it's based on occurrences. Well, one day I was having car issues, and if I were to work from home that day, I'd only be a minute or two late. He also reprimands having to work from home too much, since we're supposed to be in the office 4 times a week. If I came in the office, I'd be at least 20 minutes late. So I decided to call out sick, since it's all the same anyways. He also ended up promoting me anyways, after telling me this wasn't possible, no matter how perfect my attendance was. So I found a new job and left, giving me an even bigger raise. As soon as a company goes and pulls some BS like this where you have a collective 10 minutes late over 2 years or whatnot, and thereby uses it as an excuse to stunt your growth in that company, you can almost be rest assured they're using it as a way to control you and underpay you. I mean, if that isn't a sign to immediately start looking for a new, better employer, I don't know what is. That's how you get some turnover going for your staff. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely awesome malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.